I'd now like to welcome to the stage my good friend, Bill Hennigan. There are few more committed and engaged Rotarians than Bill. When he's not helping build companies in which he invests and coaching their management teams, he's helping our club in every way. He serves on the board, I think it's your second stint as a board member maybe, for his work as former program chair and deep involvement in our membership committee. Bill has been recognized with the Ivan Allen Club Service Award. Bill's been recognized with the Marion Collier Ross Club Leadership Award. So need I say more? Bill was instrumental in enticing Secretary Raffensperger to spend time with us today and to challenge us about how we as a club can help make the elections in Georgia in a couple of months a model of integrity as well as bipartisan participation. That's going to set us up not just for a day of service as a club, but a season of service. Is there anything more important for us to get right as a community? So Bill, if you'll do us the honor of introducing the Secretary and then leading us in the program, I would be most grateful. Thank you.
I didn't really know how long he was going to go on, but I was happy for him to continue if he wanted to. Didn't mean to hurry him. So thank you, Adrian. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for all being here. Well, we get to talk about one of our sacred American rights, and that's to vote in a competitive environment. And in the last few years, that has come under fire, and there's been a lot of controversy and talk about it. So the program committee has cleverly invited Secretary Brad Raffensperger here to talk to us about how the process has changed since the 2020 elections. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you know who Brad Raffensperger is, and he's been the Secretary of State since 2018, and he even wrote a book, and you know his background. So I won't spend any time there. But if you go on the Secretary of State website, you'll see his office is all about secure elections and strong business policies in Georgia. Now, if you remember last time, it's also about he's in charge of all the cemeteries in Georgia, but we won't go there. I digress just a little bit. I still don't get that one. But if you peruse the website, the themes are that he's put forth there are an informed voter makes for a better process and a better run government. So that's one of the themes if you go to the website, which is chock-a-block full of data and statistics, et cetera. To that end, on Brad's watch, both the Heritage Foundation and the Bipartisan Policy Center in Washington have named Georgia among the top states for, wait for it, election reliability and integrity. How about that? In light of that, more people have been voting in Georgia than ever before in the 18, 20, and 22 elections. Just to give you some context, you know, Georgia is like one of the 10th most populous states in the country. We all knew that, right? We got about 11 million people. We got about 7 million registered voters, a little over 7 million registered voters. And around 5 million of those voters voted in the 2020 election. In the 22 midterm election, a little over 4 million voted. So now, only about half the states in the United States have 5 million people in the state. So this is one of the things that Georgia is very important in terms of voting for national offices and who gets sent to Washington. So with that in mind, would you all welcome Brad Raffensperger to the stage one more time. And let's see if they both work. We decided to do a fireside chat, and if we fall off the stage, please help us. It won't be pretty. So, thank you for coming, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And more importantly, thank you for your service above self. And those who like puns, I know.
Thank you.
We've come a long way from 2020 presidential elections.
We'll see.
That's what we're going to find out today. The election last time, though tumultuous, was proven out fair and accurate. Okay.
And honest.
and honest. We'll add that word to it too. Doesn't say that here, but I'm happy to say that. But there's still a lot of voting insecurities, and there's still a lot of non-believers in the process itself, and the negative chatter is still high. So what we want to talk about today really is what's been done to improve the overall system. And then also voting is, you and I talk, voting is a participatory sport. And we all need to be involved in it. So we'll take that as our preface. Tell us what's different from 2020 to now. I mean, what's the improvements that have worked?
Okay.
As you're going
Well, thank you,
forward?
Bill. I'm going to first of all assume that many of you voted in 2022. So really in 2022, what you saw were some of the improvements that we had made. But look, over the last 4 years, some of the things that you'll see. First of all, this year, we'll have a paper ballot that actually has the state seal on it. Back in 2020, we had fibers in it, but you'd have to put a special light on it. So now you have the state seal and the special fibers, so you know that's the official paper ballot. And that is what matters at the end of the day. You are going to tabulate, with the scanners, and you're going to get an answer. But at the end of the day, when you open up that box and have to do a hand count, if that's what you do for a state house, state senate, or president race, it's the paper ballots. And they're all going to have affixed with the Secretary of State seal on there. So it's an official paper ballot. I think that's it. Also now, we have photo ID for all forms of voting. And people need to understand that when I ran back in 2018, I said we need to move away from signature match for identifying voters because I thought it was subjective. I'm an engineer, and I just thought it looked subjective. And lo and behold, we actually got sued by a political party because they said it was subjective also. Do you know which one it was? It was actually both of them. So after Stacey Abrams lost in 2018, they sued on that. And then after 2020, we got it from the Republicans. So we're, equal opportunity, offender on that. We took it off the table, and so we came up with photo ID. And guess what state we modeled it after? Minnesota, which happens to be on the left side up the aisle. Because what we noticed is that Minnesota had been doing it for years and years and years and never had been sued by the Department of Justice. We do it, and guess what? We got sued by the Department of Justice. Go figure. But at the end of the day, it gives voters confidence in the process. We also know that both Nebraska and Kansas have done that. After we put that in with SB 202, Texas went ahead and copied it too. They said, this makes sense. But what we are making sure that no matter how you vote, it's photo ID. The same forms of identification used for in-person voting, that's what we accept for your absentee voting. We think that has shored up your confidence and your trust in that process. We think that's important. So those are two big things. Since then, with the open border situation, we're just, keeping it real here. A lot of people are concerned about non-citizen voting. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, we went ahead and we did an audit. And we did an audit of citizenship of the voter rolls to make sure that only American citizens were registered. Because if you aren't registered, you can't vote. And what we found, there was about 1,600 people that could not verify their citizenship, so they weren't put on the voter rolls. And so then I could come out and talk to all of you and say, we've checked and we've made sure that only American citizens are on the voter rolls. Only American citizens are voting. And we think that gives people confidence in the process. So I think photo ID on all forms of voting and making sure just Americans are voting are really important. Now, in back office, we've done an awful lot that you won't notice, but we think it really helps, we'll streamline it. Also this fall, I think you'll see this, is all the early voting, absentee and the 17 days early voting, has to be uploaded and reported no later than 8 p.m. And what's really exciting to see, we have 159 counties. They're actually fighting with each other to see who can get it in there at 7:01, 7:02. So it's really a race to the top, a race to the fastest. But you're going to probably see then about 65% of the total vote counts by 8 p.m. Why do I say it's 65%? Because if you look at 2022, look at 2018, 2020 was an outlier, so we can kind of say that was a year that everyone voted, 30% voted no excuse absentee voting. But in 2022 and 2018, what we saw is people went back to their historical way of voting, which was in person early. About 60% of all voters are going to vote on that 17 days early voting. You get to choose what day that you want to go vote. It's 3 weeks and 2 Saturdays. About 6%, 7% will vote no excuse absentee voting. All that gets uploaded by 8 p.m. And we think that is really good for the voter. You're going to start seeing the flavor of the races, which way it's going, and it just gives you more to talk about with your friends till 12 midnight.
So now most of the people in here are from Atlanta or from maybe Fulton County, Gwinnett County, Cobb County. But tell us, get granular with us, what's the difference between voting in Fulton County, let's say, and voting in Hancock County? 9,000 people in Hancock County, 950,000 in Fulton County. Surely there's a dramatic difference.
There shouldn't be. And the reason there isn't, because we put into law that lines have to be shorter than 1 hour. And we track it. We have a tracking tool, so we're following that all day long. Now at 7 a.m., I cannot guarantee you that the line may be long, because if someone forgets the keys to get in or forgets their power cord and things like that, you may not get started and the line could build up. But what we noticed by about 10 o'clock, 10:30, our average wait time was under an hour. We only had a few precincts out of the 2,400 precincts that actually had over an hour. And the longest ones we saw in the afternoon were less than 45 minutes. So lines have to be shorter than 1 hour, no matter where you vote. And I think that goes back to the voter experience. And that's why after the 2022 cycle, MIT and UGA did a poll, and 99% of all Georgia voters said they had a good voting experience. And that's what you want. Keep it moving through. With our new electronic poll pad check-in, once you get to the front of the line, people are getting checked in less than 2 minutes, because you show them your driver's license, they check out who you are, spin it around, you sign it, and then you're getting your vote card and you're ready to go and go to the ballot marking devices. And we think that's good. So we're trying to beat Chick-fil-A for the shortest lines in America.
In Hancock County, the whole county votes in about 15 minutes. So one question I want to ask you is, so part of the entertainment value the media seems to put forth has been around highlighting the egregious rumors that flow out of any number of places. And I'll share mine if you'll share yours. The most egregious rumor.
You go first.
So I heard they wanted to get rid of all the voting boxes. And the reason was because the aliens had started putting their space lasers in the boxes. And being good public servants, they decided that it was too dangerous.
That's right up there with the Italian space lasers, I think.
Okay, so I made that up. I know that's hard to believe, but I made that up.
Someone else said that after 2020. Kind of like Beam Me Up, Scotty. The results were going over there, going over to Italy, and then coming back. At the end of the day, the voting machines, as you hopefully realize, they're not connected to the internet. And so at the end of the day, also you have a paper ballot, and we hand recounted the presidential race twice after the first count.
So what's your favorite rumor?
Oh, the favorite rumor.
That you had to go investigate. It's got to
no,
be
I didn't
legit.
have to investigate this one. This was quite easy. That I had a brother named Ron Raffensperger that worked for the Chinese. And so I feel sorry for this guy, because there's not a lot of Raffenspergers. Not even in Pennsylvania, which is where we came from a couple hundred years ago. So this poor fella, his name's Ron Raffensperger, and he actually worked for Huawei. But I knew he was not my brother, because I have another brother with, a different name. And so, no, it wasn't that brother, and I'm not going to mention it, because he doesn't need to get followed or tracked, and, like by all the folks that would do that. He's enjoying his life. But then I just felt sorry for this poor guy. But what is the chances of some guy with the same last name working for the Chinese? Poor man. Just to think about his life was just pure misery, getting dogged. And he's thinking, well, I'm not related to this guy at all. So my dad was an only son. I have one brother, and my dad was an only son. His father was an only son. And it goes all the way back somewhere in Levi. Levi and Lewis, they were two brothers back in the 1870s or something like that. And I don't think any of them had a Ron. So this is way up the family tree. So I know we're related like 10 generations removed, but he's not my brother.
On a serious note, one of the rumors that I want to run by you, just for you to talk about for us, is allowing citizens the ability to challenge the eligibility of other voters. And is that a more efficient way to purge the voter rolls? That was one of the rumors that I picked up in my research.
I think that we, in the election space, have a duty and obligation to make sure we have clean, accurate voter list. And we do in Georgia. In fact, I would submit that we have the cleanest list in the entire country. And here's why. Number one, when I took office, we got authority from the General Assembly to get new voting equipment, but also to join a multi-state organization that we could share information securely of other states. And there was about 35 other states that we would share that information with. And that means that if you go ahead and move to one of those states, that are a member of the Electronic Registration Information Center, it's called ERIC for short, then they tell us, Bob moved to Nebraska, and they're members of ERIC, and here's the information, and so we would know about that, and we could take them off the voter rolls. Now, Nebraska's not a member. They never did join because of the cost, but we had 35 states. But we kept up our membership. But a few years ago, Gateway Pundit came out and said that was all controlled by George Soros, and it was a left-wing organization, and you just couldn't trust it. So every Republican state except Georgia, Utah, and Kentucky pulled out. So now there's about 25 to 28 of us that are in this organization, and we're not getting out, so we're still getting all that information from Michigan. Ohio pulled out, so they're not getting any information from Michigan. But I don't hold grudges. Alabama pulled out, and he says, hey, we'd like to do a bilateral with you. And I said, absolutely. So we did 4 bilaterals already with other states. So we have one with Virginia who pulled out, Alabama, Florida, and we're working on Texas because we want to have the cleanest list. So we have the ERIC data. The other thing that we have, Governor Kemp's Department of Driver Services, finally after all these years, maybe it helps that he's the governor, and so we now are getting all the information from Department of Driver Services. Many people don't realize that DDS actually has an agreement nationwide with all other 49 states, District of Columbia. If you move to another state and get a driver's license there, Georgia Department of Driver Services finds out about it. We get notified. So then we can reach this voter that may have moved to another state that's not member of ERIC, we don't have a bilateral with, but we send a notice to them. Sir, madam, we understand that you moved to New York State. Is that true? And if they're nice enough to actually respond back and say, yes, I did, then we can take them off the voter rolls immediately. If they don't respond, we can't take them off. And why? Because of federal law. You just can't do that because you send something out. How do they they really got it? But we can put in this hopper here that says, we think they moved, they got a driver's license in, so they're gonna have to show proof when they show up that they still live here. And that's why we have the cleanest voter rolls. You mentioned that we're ranked number 1 in the country by the Bipartisan Policy Center, tied with Colorado. And so knowing this crowd is probably a 50-50 crowd, half of you won't care about this, but the half that are Republicans might. Heritage Foundation has ranked us number 2 in the whole country for election integrity. So when you hear that people still dogging on Georgia's elections about how honest and fair and accurate they are, the Heritage Foundation, which is hard right think tank, says that we have election integrity. And so when you have the Bipartisan Institute, you have Heritage seeing these things, we're making sure we have fair, honest, accurate elections here in Georgia.
So that's a terrific segue to a little bit more granular, serious question. So would you explain to us about the Georgia Elections Board and what's the relationship to the Secretary of State's office? And I know you happen to be on that board for a while, for a short period of time, but can you explain that to us? What they do versus what you do versus where's that going? And we certainly read about it in the AJC a lot.
Simply put, they're a mess.
Well, I'll let you expand then with a quote that, the AJC gets most of the quotes almost right. So I'll run this one by you, from you. Activists seeking to impose last-minute changes on the election procedures outside of the legislative process undermine voter confidence and burden election workers. And I see your table over there starting to sweat. Misguided attempts by the state election board will delay election results and undermine the chain of custody safeguards. Talk us through that.
Well, whoever said that is a pretty sharp guy, because I agreed with it 100%. So.
Mr. Ravensburger said in a statement.
When you get close to the end of the cycle, the counties have already done their poll worker training. They've already been working on their procedures. We have already built ballots, and they're at the printers right now for well over 125 of the counties already. We're finishing that process, and all of a sudden, you're telling us that you want the train to make a detour over here and get on another track, which also has a different gauge width. It's just really, really difficult to start changing the process. But if you keep on just kind of going out every day doing the same thing, it really lets you get good at that cycle. Number one concern that we have is it's so late in the cycle for training. But also, they're talking about hand counting the number of ballots you have at the precinct level. Well, right now, when you finish up at the end of the night, what you're really doing is running the tape. You know how many people showed up, how many people have voted, but you actually don't break open the ballot boxes at the county. They come at the precinct. They come back to the county, typically with 2 people, and a lot of times in the smaller counties with a deputy going with them to make sure they're secured all the way back to county warehouse. If you're ever going to open up that ballot box, it happened at the county headquarters. So you maintain a very strict chain of custody. And after 2020, people are always talking about chain of custody, chain of custody. Well, what they're trying to introduce right here now is a potential area where you could have a break in the chain of custody. And I don't think that's really a wise decision on their part. So that is, one of the areas that, we obviously, disagree with.
So where are they going with this?
Well, I know that they've been sued by an organization or a campaign, and so it'll be before a judge at the end of the day. And that's really all I can say, because the General Assembly, after 2020, said they didn't want me to have anything to do with the state election board. And so, they put the people on, and it's really their problem to fix.
So biggest concern about the upcoming 24 election? You had to claim one as you're in the myriad.
Well, I don't want to do that, because all of a sudden, it could have been number 2, 3, or 4. We don't know what it is. Because a year ago, 9 months ago, we never thought we'd have an issue with someone mailing something through the postal service. And all of a sudden, we found out there was a fentanyl-laden letter potentially coming to Fulton County. Lo and behold, Postal Service intercepted it, and it had fentanyl in it. And so that was, a new one for us. So the governor very graciously, through the Department of Community Health, made sure that we had Narcan available for all 159 county election offices that receive mail. So if something does happen like that, we can respond to it very quickly. So that was not on our radar. It is now. AI has notched up several spots, because the deep fake could be so deep that you won't be able to recognize it. But a great professor from Georgia Tech that has specialized in that, doing a lot of stuff with DARPA and things like that, has volunteered to come sit down with us. We want to reach out to him. We try to lean into federal resources, any resources we can have, just to try and stay half a step ahead of those kind of folks. So there's a lot of different things that it could be, but we want to make sure everyone understands that the county's responsibility is the Monday after the election. They shall, as it's written in state law, they shall, there's no, it may be or whatever, they shall certify their county elections by the Monday after the election day. And so that's their responsibility. So we need to make sure that they follow the law, follow the Constitution.
So let me put a hypothetical out there for you. So let's say that this group right here is all volunteers to be your extended staff during the election process. Again, your table is sweating up a storm. So all these people are your election. More importantly, they've got access to lots and lots of employees all over the state who can volunteer and step in and help. How would you deploy them? How would you put them to work? How would you put, Dom in a different role than this young man right here?
Okay. I see the hook is about to get us, so I will be very quick. Number one, I would encourage everyone to be a poll worker. But if you said, I don't have the time to be a poll worker, what I really would encourage you then is go through the poll worker training. And the reason is that you are all influencers in your community. And so when people say stuff like that, you say, well, I'm not going to be working the polls this year because I can't get time off. But I know that this is what they actually taught us. And what you're saying, Mary, or this is what you're saying, Bob, it's not the correct thing. This is how it actually works. So I think that's really, one of the things that you could really do that would be helpful, because you are influencers. You are the key leaders in our community. So you can really, just by leaning into it and add your voice of authority on that. But you also, if you go through poll worker training, you really would understand. We also put a little handout there, but I also gave you some tidbits on, we have photo ID, we've checked citizenship. But if you have any questions, I want you to know, here's my personal cell number. It is 770-845-3205. If anyone didn't get that, it's 770-845-3205. Text me. Tell me what your question is, and we will get you an answer.
But what's a poll worker? I mean, what are the roles a poll worker would actually do?
It could be, if it's your first time and they have plenty of poll workers, you could just be greeting people. And we always need people to do that. But you could be at the check-in table. But you will probably be there on Election Day in November. You'll probably be there for 16 hours, just to let you know. You'll want to be there by no later than 6. And then you're going to be there all the way till probably 9:30. It's a long, long day. But if we have additional poll workers, then you'll actually have time. You can take some time off so someone can actually have lunch or have a break. But it's the greatest public service that you can do. We've actually partnered with Vet the Vote. These are veterans that have served their country in the military that now are going to be volunteering to be poll workers. And we're just really working closely with them because we know the most respected folks in our community are our veterans. And when you see that you have a veteran there, it just adds an air of good, solid American. You know they're doing the right thing no matter what. They're not looking left or right, just doing their job.
How do you get assigned to poll? Are you going to send me to Hahira, Georgia?
Well, you're going to be your county, or you can actually, if all your friends live in an adjoining county and you would like to join there, you can go to an adjoining. But you can't jump over 2 counties. We put that into law, with SB 202.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Secretary Raffensperger, for a very engaging conversation. I'd like to open it up to questions from members. And as we do that, you'll notice the reason we put Bill on a high chair is we could see his pink flamingo socks, right? Secretary Raffensperger, we are going to accept your challenge as a club. We are building programs around the election. We are, under Jennifer Dorian's leadership as VP of Club Service, going to present a way for members to engage with as much or as little time as possible on the elections to make it a model of integrity. So, Paige, go ahead with your first question.
Great. Thank you, Secretary. It's good to see you. Thank you for clarifying some of the misinformation that's out there. How worried are you about political violence? I mean, we at the Carter Center, of course, are looking pre-election and post-election, but how worried are you about this on Election Day? Is there anything you can do, and is there anything we can do?
We want to make sure our precincts stay safe. So we have a couple things. One is we have lanyards for people that they can press the button when they really see it's getting out of control. We also have a texting tool, see something, say something. We also have been working with law enforcement, the county sheriffs. We've done tabletops, with law enforcement. Our former state election director is now the number 2 with the Police Officer Training Council. And so Chris Harvey has been working with law enforcement throughout the state. And so I've been at many of these conferences with Chris. And so we want to make sure it remains a safe environment. And I think there's a role for all of us to play in that. And does that answer your question, Paige?
Yes.
Then the other thing is, if you need any more information about poll worker or those kind of things, you can reach out to Paige Alexander at the Carter Center. She'll do.
Paige, what's your cell phone number? Go ahead, Jeff.
Secretary, I'd like to speak about being a public servant for a while, because you're a true servant leader. I think we all would agree with that. First, could your public servants, the people who work for you, stand up? I think you might have some staff here, or not.
There's a couple over there.
I thought you had some.
So, the lady in the orange dress, that's my Deputy Secretary of State, Jordan Fuchs. She's our number 2 in the office. Liz Hausman handles all of our community outreach. Also, we do more than elections. We do have a whole financial empowerment, and so she leads a high school program all about
cemeteries.
Yeah, we got you. Gil and Robert handles communications.
Thank you for your service.
We have the president of Emory here, of Georgia State, maybe some others, Agnes Gottlieb-Zach. We have the dean of Georgia Tech, we see, as well as Bill Todd from Georgia Tech. Could you talk about some of the joys of being a public servant? I think you have an MBA from Georgia State. You're trading off an opportunity cost of more income, et cetera, the tensions that you face. How can we as educators convince some people about being public servants and the benefits to society of it and fulfillment of yourself?
Honestly, I think the most important thing, I know when I was getting my MBA night school with one child, and the second child was on the way, born just a couple months after I got back, because we had moved from Northern Virginia. So then I finished up at Georgia State. But I think that the best thing that folks can really do is be involved in a community-based organization like Rotary, because it really is going to help you build a big network, also be surrounded by good people. In fact, I really wish that everyone that held an elected office really embraced and lived out your four-way test, because that is really what's going to stand the test of time when push comes to shove. I think in business, there'll be those moments when you got to do the right thing regardless of the cost. But I also think in our space, no matter where you are in the political space, it's going to be that time when it comes come to shove. But I'd actually really encourage people to get secure financially before you want to step out and do something in the political space. Because I would never want you to be financially leveraged, because you aren't at that point secure that maybe you make a decision that you wouldn't make if you're at a different point in your life, that you knew that you had your house in good shape and those type of things. And that's kind of, my pastor talks a lot about never being leveraged and always having some margin in your life. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. So, but if you're 22 years old and you want to run for the State House, we had these young folks down there, and they were exciting, both sides of the aisle. And it was just really cool to see their dynamic, fervor for what the causes were so important. But in my space, I waited till I, had enough time, enough margin that I could be on city council. Yeah. And then if you want to do the most important job, is run for the school board, because that's our next generation. Mm-hmm. That's our next generation of Georgians, and that's really important to me because we have grandkids now, and I want to make sure they have a great future. And then you may end up in the State House, and who knows where you could take it from there.
Wow. Mr. Secretary, what did you say about politicians and Rotarians and getting stuff done?
They always do. Well, Rotarians always do. And I think the reason is that I know you don't agree on all the side issues, but you say, here's our common values. We're not going to argue over this. We're not going to go down that rabbit trail.
Right.
But this is what we're going to do. And say, why don't we go ahead, what kind of worldwide disease could we go ahead and attack? And so you say, okay, let's go after polio. And then you say, there's a lot of dirty water out there. What can we do about clean water? Then, what about human sex trafficking? What can we do about that? So you pick these causes and you have great success because you major on the major and you minor on the minors, and you get things done. And I think really in the political space, that's what we never should lose sight of, is the people that we're serving. Hardworking people that want you to do your job. And remember, there's folks out here that aren't doing as well as some other folks, so make sure you always say, make sure we have a good future.
It's well said. Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your remarks today. And I'll say I was here in 2020. I dare say that was historic. And I'm hoping maybe you share it, that this one will not be seen as historic. It would be normal. So my question is a little bit technical, but it could be open up a can of worms. What happens if a county's count is not certified by the deadline? And I think that would be the following Monday.
Well, it means that they would have violated state law, and then I'm sure that there will be an action, a legal action going to the Superior Court judge. And when the Superior Court judge, he makes a decision that you shall, and then your choice will be you will do it or you'll be in jail. And it'll get done anyway, but you'll be sitting in jail for contempt of court. And I just don't believe you should ever want to trifle with a judge.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if you'll have this data, but my question is, how many new first-time voters do we expect in the state of Georgia?
I don't have that number for you, but maybe I'll get that for Bill and he can send it out to the group.
Okay.
We will follow up. Any other questions for the Secretary? Jennifer.
Hey, Secretary, does it aid the process of voting by business owners or leaders in the room encouraging early voting? Does that help smooth out the demand?
By state law, you actually have to give your employees off 2 hours. I think actually we increased it to 4 now for early voting. But I just think it's a great opportunity because on election day, you never know, it could be raining, could be cold. You come down with a cold. So it gives you that opportunity. You don't know what your business schedule is. And my election day, I am busy now. And so I vote early. And so it just works out for me. But what we have noticed is when we added the second Saturday, guess who votes on Saturdays? Hard-working Georgians that couldn't get off Monday to Friday because they could have a job where they're traveling, but they don't want to vote absentee, so they show up on Saturday. And so we're having great participation on that, and it really has helped because that's 60 to 65% of all your votes right there.
David?
Mr. Secretary, you didn't talk about anything about cyber threats. Curious to know how you and the other secretaries of state around the country are coordinating among our foreign enemies who may be trying to cause the disruptions that may be even more serious than paper ballots and lock boxes and laser guns inside of boxes. So, go ahead. So the question is about cybersecurity and how you guys are managing against those issues.
Yep. Well, we're really grateful. We have a new IT director that came from a large county, a lot of experience, been doing this for 18, 20 years, and he's heading up and brought in some fresh talent. That's great. But our horizon is not that far, so we have to lean into state resources, and their horizon's a little bit farther. But then all of a sudden, we really need to lean into FBI and CISA and people that have international scope. You just heard recently that we had nation-state actors, Iran, Russia, Korea, Venezuela. We know those 4 bad guys out there that are going to be trying stuff. And then we'll have homegrown stuff too, people that just want to amuse themselves or cause mischief. That's the other thing that kind of ties in with the AI too. It's just being always on your toes. Fulton County had a hack, not of the election system, but it came in through ransomware, another part of the county. But we have the ability now to shut out any county immediately. We shut out Fulton County until we made sure that they actually had, secured all the gateways. So then we allowed them back in. We had that happen with another county. We shut them out for a day. And then it was a rural county. They went to another county with these names that they wanted to register, and they used that county's database because it uploaded us so they could work their little workaround. Once they fixed their issue, then we could reconnect them. So we are on top of that. But those are the kind of things that happen on election day, that it'll really keep your folks. But we have a war room. It's about this big. We don't tell you where it's at, but we have state resources there, and we have federal resources there. And we have a big screen that's as big as that of all these different things we're monitoring and following. We call it our war room because in that way it's a countdown, to when the polls close at 7:01 or 8 o'clock, and there'll be a few late ones, and then the tabulation throughout the night. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being a model of service above self. And members, I don't think there's a clearer call to action than having his personal cell phone number. 4 years, seriously, 4 years ago, many of us gave employees time off to go get their votes done. So they didn't have to do that on a Saturday. That's an easy thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's an easy thing to find time to observe a poll. It's probably more difficult to be a poll worker. My wife has found that to be very rewarding. She's done that on several occasions. We're committed as a club to creating a platform in support of your vision. And there'll be more information coming to you all from Jennifer as VP of Club Service in order for us as a club to lean into that. And before we thank you, I wanted to give you all a quick preview of some exciting programs. Next week, past President John Yates will be leading a discussion with the former CEO of General Electric, Jeff Immelt, on how Atlanta is hopefully going to lap Silicon Valley anytime soon, John, under your leadership. And we've got some really exciting people coming in and around the elections. Dennis Lockhart has kindly agreed to moderate the conversation with Judge Luddick, which should be rather interesting. So with that, I'd like to thank Bill Hennigan for masterminding this talk that was so engaging. And thank you again, Secretary Raffensperger and your staff for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.